you beautiful people out there. How y'all doing today? That is fantastic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Double Diesel Sports Podcast, where we will be doing an AFC South preview as we get closer and closer to the National Football League season. But before we get into that, I'd like to ask, if you're not already, to please like, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoy this content or know anybody who would enjoy this kind of content. Helps boost the exposure, get us out to more eyeballs, more viewers. So if you have not done that and you would like to, that would be greatly appreciated to me. Also, if you have not already, go support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. Helps put food in my belly, helps support this channel financially. If you would like to do that, the link to that would be in the description down below at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. But let's get on with the video. So, the AFC South. This is a division. this is an interesting one where it's like, with every division we talk about, that we have talked about, and that we will talk about for the remainder of this 8-video series, is that there's, certain teams where there's like, all right, there's a bunch of teams that if the cards fall right, they'll be able to compete. There are like 2 or 3 teams that you can see like, all right, they can make a push to the playoffs or win the division. Whereas with this division, it's like, all right, there's one clear good team and the other 3 are just sort of in the stages of their own rebuild, essentially. It is kind of underwhelming in that regard. You kind of know what team that is, and it's just sort of bleh. That's really the best way to describe this division. It's just sort of bleh. But we will still talk about this because there are some interesting things to talk about, for sure. We are going to talk about each team in this division, rank them 1 through 4 by position groups, how they stack up against each other. And we will start off, as always, with the quarterback position, where this is where the most intrigue within this division is. Number 1, obviously, is Trevor Lawrence. It will probably forever be Trevor Lawrence, depending on how 3 and 4, how they develop. But at the moment, it is Trevor Lawrence, football Jesus himself. He has become exactly what we all knew he was going to be coming out of Clemson, the generationally talented quarterback that we all saw from his high school days all the way through his days at Clemson. His rookie year, last year was basically his rookie year. I don't think anybody's going to hold whatever the hell 2021 was with the whole Urban Meyer debacle. I don't think anybody's going to hold that against Trevor Lawrence, because you come to last year, you bring in a real coach in Doug Peterson that's a Super Bowl winning coach that has experience. And once you know it, Trevor Lawrence, in what, like I said, was essentially his rookie year, performs incredibly well, leads this team to a playoff victory over the Chargers, a huge comeback win, which is an incredible game to watch, wins the division. They almost knock off the eventual Super Bowl champion Chiefs, and Trevor Lawrence has, like I said, he has been as good as advertised. There's really nothing else to say about him that hasn't already been said. Now, the questions start with 2 through 4, and number 2 at the moment is Ryan Tannehill, for the sole reason that he's the only proven one outside of Trevor Lawrence, obviously, in this division. There was a lot of, I won't want to say hype, but there was a lot of optimism around him when he first arrived to Tennessee. When he overtook Marcus Mariota as the starter back in 2019, was one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the league, got a huge payday, and it was well-deserved. But, since then, things have kind of tapered off a little bit. He hasn't been as efficient, he hasn't been as good, and it's made Titans fans, and maybe even the organization to an extent, really question of what is their ceiling with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Hence why they drafted Malik Willis last year. Hence why they drafted Will Levis, why they felt the need to trade up to get Will Levis this year. They're options because they don't know if Ryan Tannehill could be the guy for that much longer. And I wouldn't be shocked if they already feel like he's not the guy anymore. But for starting quarterbacks in the league, he's about as average as you can possibly get. He can do some good things for you, still athletic enough to run and move and extend plays when the pocket does break down. So at least you have that. But as far as a guy that you're expecting to take you to the promised land or even take you to the postseason, that hype around Ryan Tannehill is long gone in my eyes. And then we get to the two rookie quarterbacks. I have CJ Stroud as number 3 over Anthony Richardson at the moment, simply because I think out of the two, they're both really raw prospects, but I think out of the two, CJ Stroud is a little more defined as a quarterback right now than Anthony Richardson could be. Though by the time toe meets ball, this could be completely switched around for sure. But I have CJ Stroud at number 3 simply because he is, like I said, he's not as raw as Richardson. He's incredibly accurate. Like, when I watched him at Ohio State, especially his last year at Ohio State, his accuracy really shocked me. He was one of the more accurate quarterbacks I can remember coming out of college. And he has arm talent for days. Nobody's going to question his physical talent. Arm strength for days, has a good ability to extend plays. Now, the question is, as most questions are when it comes to Ohio State quarterbacks, is what happens when you remove him from the Ohio State system, which is notorious for being incredibly quarterback friendly. He always had great protection at Ohio State. He always had top tier receivers at Ohio State. So what is he going to look like out of that, going to a rebuilding Houston team that doesn't have nearly the protection or the weaponry that he had at Ohio State? That's always the question with Ohio State quarterbacks, and we're going to have to wait and see on that. But the physical tools, his accuracy, that's not a question in my eyes. And because of that, I think he'll be a very good starter in the league, if not potentially even in year 1. And that means number 4 is Anthony Richardson, but he has the potential of all these guys to just shoot up this ranking for sure, even by midseason, depending on how his rookie year goes. I mean, we all know how physically freakish of an athlete Anthony Richardson is. I mean, he blew up the combine, 6'4", 245 pounds, running a 4.44, like a 40-inch vertical jump. Like, he is an insane athlete. I remember I saw this in that franchise guy sort of said this, and it's so great. It's such a perfect sentence for this, is that Anthony Richardson at Florida had what we call a fuck you arm, where he has the arm talent to make every throw on the field. I mean, we all saw the clip at his pro day as well when he was throwing a deep ball and it hit the rafters in the ceiling. It is absolutely insane, the physical talent he is. The problem is it's the same thing with most of these incredibly raw super athletes, is it's going to take time for them to catch on from the mental aspect of the game. Can they read defenses properly? Can they grasp that area of the game? We know that they have the athletic ability to, if a play breaks down, to just go on a wing and just wing it and just play like that. But it's, can you stand tall in the pocket? Can you see what the defense is giving you? Can you make the right read and know, all right, if this happens, I got to go here with the football? That's a question with Anthony Richardson, but he is going to a good spot in Indianapolis where he's working with a head coach in Shane Steichen, who developed Jalen Hurts, who was same thing almost coming out of Oklahoma, even back to his days at Alabama, where Jalen Hurts was the same thing. Came into the league, was incredibly raw, didn't really know how to play the quarterback position, and then within 3 years, developed under Shane Steichen, became one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, and led his team to a Super Bowl. And there's no reason why Anthony Richardson can't be a Jalen Hurts-esque player, if not better than Jalen Hurts. Because I'm dead serious when I say this. If Anthony Richardson hits on his potential and he reaches his full potential and becomes Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen with his physical traits, I mean, this might be a little too outlandish, might be too much of a hot take, but Forget Patrick Mahomes. He's the ultimate super weapon in the NFL. So that's sort of the upside, but it's a matter of a wait and see thing. People who are expecting Anthony Richardson to be that in year one, we got to pump the brakes on that. But 2-3 years from now, we can absolutely see that if he is developed properly, which, like I said, with Shane Steichen, I can imagine there's no reason why that can't be the case. But now we are going to move away from the quarterbacks and move on to the guys that are going to take the load off of the quarterbacks, and that is the running back positions, where number one is Derrick Henry. That shouldn't be really a shock to anybody. He's not the king anymore. Like I said back in my AFC North preview, that I think Nick Chubb has asserted himself as the best running back in the NFL. But that's not as a slight to Derrick Henry. Even though he is up there in age, he's not as, dominant as he once was. He hasn't been able to get as many breakaway runs where it felt like a couple of years ago he was doing like 2 60-yard runs, it seemed like every single week. But Derrick Henry is still one of the premier football players at this position. He's still a guy who's so big, so strong. DBs, hell, even linebackers don't even want to tackle him as the game goes on. And he's one of those guys where it really is like, as the game goes on, defenders just don't want to keep hitting him anymore because he is so big. He's 6'3", like 230 pounds or so. Like, even though, yeah, he's up there in age and his body has taken a bit of a beating, it's still a situation where guys are like, hey, man, I don't want to hit this big-ass dude running a 4.5 straight at me. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to keep my career going. And it's funny because Derrick Henry has never been like a power back. He's more of a wide zone, like almost shifty kind of runner. He's more of like an elusive runner in that sense. He's not really a guy that's going to lower your shoulder and run you over. He's never really been that guy despite his big frame would suggest. But he's still probably the hardest guy in the NFL to tackle. And I can't imagine a world where he takes a massive dip in production this year. I think he's still going to be a top 5, if not top 3 running back in the NFL. And then Tajay Spears, who they drafted this year out of Tulane, is kind of the opposite of Derrick Henry, where despite him being really, really small, and he is also really, really shifty, but he also has a lot more power than you would expect. Like, Tajay Spears is a little more of a power back than Derrick Henry would be considered in the traditional sense. But Tajay Spears is just like really small, really shifty, but also has the strength because he has so much muscle to just lower the shoulder and run you over a little bit. So he's a nice complement to Derrick Henry, and it's a good situation where if Derrick Henry, because he has dealt with injuries over the past couple of years, where if Derrick Henry, you need him to rest up a little bit, Tajay Spears can come in and take some of the load off of that. And that's a really good situation for the Titans as a whole in their run game, where they're an offense that they lean on the success of Derrick Henry. We've seen, like, if Derrick Henry isn't successful, the Titans offense isn't successful. So that's a good situation to have, of bringing in Tajay Spears, keeping Derrick Henry fresh and healthy. Everyone's happy. That is, except for opposing defenses. And then you get to number 2, and the Houston Texans, they hit on Dameon Pierce last year. They got him in the middle of the rounds out of Florida, and he was the lone, or one of the lone bright spots on a pretty bad Texans offense last year. And he's another guy where he just doesn't give a shit. He will lower his shoulder, lower his head, run over guys, run through tackles. He's so ridiculously strong, and it's one of the reasons why he's so fun to watch. But he's another guy where we've seen it. The running back conversation has been a topic all training camp, where it's the beating that these guys take. And at some point, that strong running style is going to come back and bite Dameon Pierce in the ass. Hence why they felt the need to bring in someone like a Devin Singletary, who is kind of similar to Dameon Pierce, Also, really strong runner, very difficult to tackle, but he's also a good complement to Dameon Pierce because he's much more elusive than him. He's much more of a elusive east-west runner, really explosive jump cut. So he is he's very similar to Dameon Pierce from his play style or like strength perspective and running through tackles, but he's also a good complement because he gives you an aspect that Dameon Pierce can't give you, which is his agility. So that's a really good compliment. It's the same thing as bringing in a guy that will take the load and take the pressure off of Dameon Pierce and not have him get hit so much throughout the course of a game. And then he gets to number 3 with Jacksonville. And Travis Etienne, I will admit, when they drafted him in the first round in 2021, he was an Urban Meyer guy. I mean, it was clear he was an Urban Meyer guy. But even then, I was like, I don't get it. Like, I've always been very strong of, being very cautious of drafting running backs in the first round, even if they'll be good players. It's more of like we've seen how the league has evolved, and that the running back position has kind of been devalued in a lot of ways. But, Travis Etienne, he's proved me wrong. He showed that he is good enough to be a first-round pick, and he missed all of his rookie year with the Liz Frank injury. And then he comes back last year, which was basically his rookie season, and he plays really, really well. A lot stronger and a lot more able to break tackles than you would expect from a guy his size, but he's incredibly elusive, really good receiver out of the backfield, and he was electric for them last year, and I can only imagine he's going to take another tick up this year. And then Tank Bigsby was a rookie they drafted out of Auburn this year, and he is take what I said about Travis Etienne and copy and paste with Tank Bigsby. They're basically the same player. Very short in stature, but a lot more tougher to tackle than you'd expect. Good receivers out of the backfield, very elusive. They are very similar backs, where it's like if it's a situation where Travis Etienne gets hurt, you could put Tank Bigsby in and you'll get pretty much the same production or the same type of runner at least. And then we get to the Indianapolis Colts, and this is just kind of depressing because the whole Jonathan Taylor saga that has transpired throughout this entire month has been just so weird to watch. And Jonathan Taylor, he wanted a contract extension because he saw what was happening with his fellow running back brethren throughout the league. And Jim Irsay just told him straight up, no, we're not going to pay you that. So he demands to get traded. And then they say, all right, go seek a trade partner. They couldn't find one. He comes back. They still don't pay him. And in fact, just a week out from the season starting, they place him on the PUP list, which for those of you who don't know what that is the physically unable to perform list, which means he's going to miss at least the first 4 games of the regular season. And that, it raises so many questions, and it's so confusing because it's a matter of, did they place him on the PUP list at a spike? Because remember, at the beginning, they said, okay, he was dealing with like a leg injury of some sort, but Jonathan Taylor said like, no, that's not what's going on. But they still place him on the PUP list anyway, so it's a matter of, is he actually injured? Did Jim Irsay and the Colts just place him on there out of spite? It's a whole weird thing that it's just so sad because Jonathan Taylor, he was another reason why I was so optimistic for, Anthony Richardson's development, because he would take so much of the pressure off of him. Because if Jonathan Taylor was here and I had Jonathan Taylor on this graphic, there's no way they're the 4th ranked running back room in this division. Not even close. In fact, they're one of the best running back rooms in the league with Jonathan Taylor. And without him, they're one of the worst, as you can see right here. Because now they have to go into the season with Zach Moss being their starting running back. And that's not a slight to Zach Moss. He's fine. But, Zach Moss, he's a power back. He's a guy that got in the Nyheim Hines trade. Hell, they were probably better off with Naheem Hines being their number one back. But, Jonathan Taylor is just such a special athlete, and Zach Moss is like the complete opposite of him. And it's just the whole running game as a whole is just going to take a huge ding as a result. And again, that's not a slight to Zach Moss. It's just sort of like, damn, this could have been special, and it instead just got incredibly messy. And then Deion Jackson is a backup player with, decent explosiveness, but nothing too crazy outside of that. Yeah, it's just really sad because if Jonathan Taylor, if he does come back after 4 games, then this looks completely different. But it's just, man, this whole thing with Taylor and the Colts and Jim Irsay just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth and sour taste in everybody's mouth. I think that's a pretty good assessment to say. And then we're going to move on from that and move on to the sexy part of the offense, and that is the receiving cores for all of these teams. And number one is, again, there's a clear number one to me, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this is the year we're going to get Calvin Ridley playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars. People forget they acquired him in the trade with Atlanta last year at the trade deadline when he was in the middle of serving that season-long suspension for the gambling thing. And he's now officially come back. Suspension is over. He's now coming back, and he's officially their number one wide receiver, and Trevor Lawrence is going to love him. I mean, we've seen this over the past couple of years of teams with these young quarterbacks and bringing in these superstar-level receivers. You saw it with the Eagles with A.J. Brown. You see it with the Bears with bringing in DJ Moore. These guys these teams rather, that are bringing in these star receivers and placing them alongside these young developing quarterbacks and just letting them have fireworks. And there's no reason why Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence can't be another one of those things that take this team over the hump. And I know people probably forgot how good Calvin Ridley is because he hasn't played football in a year, but he is one of the better route runners in the NFL. Excellent speed, hit or miss at times from a contested catch standpoint, but he is so incredibly electric with the ball in his hands. I think this year will be the year because he's never really had super stellar quarterback play because he came in when Matt Ryan was sort of on the tail end of his career in Atlanta. But with Trevor Lawrence, with him being paired up with Trevor Lawrence, like I said, I'm expecting fireworks, and I'm so excited to see how Calvin Ridley performs this year. And then Zay Jones is listed as the number 2 outside receiver, and he's just a really solid third option on a team. Really good route runner, decent speed. He's one of these receivers that is good but not great at everything. He's just a really good number 3 and can be your number 2, but you're not super excited about him as your number 2. But like I said, he'd be this team's third option because of Christian Kirk also being here. And he was a part of that huge wave of free agent signings, as was Zay Jones, but Christian Kirk was sort of like the headliner of it because they gave him that big contract, and everybody, myself included, shat on the Jaguars and Trent Baalke for that signing because they were like, Christian Kirk is a number 2 receiver that's never reached 1,000 yards in his career. Why are you paying him A.J. Brown level money? And he came in, and like I said, he proved everybody wrong. He was really freaking good last year for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's an excellent route runner, good, not great speed, good ball winner. He had to step up as this team's number 1 last year, and he filled that role really, really well. He was a big reason why the Jaguars not only won their division and made the playoffs, but he was a big reason why they had that huge comeback and beat the Chargers in that playoff game. And now he's coming in and he's basically going to be this team's number 2. And now all of a sudden you're cooking with gas because if you're getting what Christian Kirk played like last year as your number 2, look out, man. Like I said, this is going to be a special, special group, and I'm so excited. And I haven't even talked about Evan Ingram yet, who they gave him an extension in the offseason. It's very clear that he wants to be in Jacksonville. It's clear that they want him to stay because he's more vital to this offense than a lot of people think. You know, he got a kind of a bad rap towards the end of his Giants career after he had a stellar rookie year, and then it kind of tapered off after that. He made a Pro Bowl that he should not have made because he led the league in drops that same year, and everyone just sort of gave up on Evan Ingram. And then he shows up in Jacksonville last year and gets his confidence back. You know, it's very clear Evan Ingram is more receiver than tight end. He's, again, one of those guys that is like, he's too small to be a tight end, but he's also too big to be a true wide receiver. But he, like I said, he got his confidence back last year, was always really good after the catch when he could catch it. But even then, like you saw last year, you could tell he got on the jugs machine a little bit, and the drops he had went down. And he's a very vital piece of this offense. And this is just a really good, well-rounded group of complementary skill sets. And like I said, fireworks are going to be had in Jacksonville, Florida this year in 2023. And I am so excited to watch it. And then as we move down the list, number 2 is the Indianapolis Colts. You know, this is just a very good, sound group with a bunch of skill sets that make sense with each other. You know, Michael Pittman is this team's number 1. I don't love him as a number 1, but he's solid as one. You know, excellent route runner, great contested catch guy, strong hands. He's just as a reliable, big body receiver. Not a lot of speed, not very good after the catch, but he's just throw it to him on a crucial third down. You can trust that he's going to come down with the football. And then you get Alec Pierce as your number 2. They drafted him in the second round last year out of Cincinnati. A lot more speed than you'd expect. I mean, I think he ran like, what was it, like a low 4.3, high 4.4 in the combine last year, which I did not know he had that speed in him. But he's sort of like that Pittman kind of guy, except just faster. But other than that, he's, again, really good route runner, excellent contested catch winner. You know, I wouldn't be all that surprised if Alec Pierce ends up developing and maybe even overtakes Michael Pittman as the number 1. You know, I wouldn't be too shocked at that if that does happen. And then Josh Downs, a rookie out of North Carolina that they drafted this year in the 3rd round. I cannot believe they got Josh Downs in the 3rd round. But he is a red zone demon. He was that at North Carolina. Really good route runner inside the 20s. He is so explosive in short area situations. Really reliable hands. Really freaking fast. And so quick off the ball. So quick in his release. He is one of the most fun players in this past draft class. And I'm super excited to see what he turns out to be, because I really am a Josh Downs truther. And then you get to Jelani Woods, another second-year guy. This is a really young core, and Jelani Woods showed a lot of promise last year as this team's starting tight end. You know, very big, very physical, great athlete, good after the catch. He's huge. He's very difficult to bring down, and I only expect him to take another step in his development. So this is a young receiving core matched up with Anthony Richardson, and I'm really excited to see how this whole core develops. And then you get Tennessee at number 3. And I rank him at number 3 for the sole reason that you have one true alpha in DeAndre Hopkins and pretty much nothing else after that. And even DeAndre Hopkins has some questions coming into this year because, you know, he is up there in age, and he is coming off, you know, a couple injury-riddled years. And you don't know if he's the D-Hop of old. I don't think he truly is. I do expect him to take a step down as far as the usual DeAndre Hopkins we expect. But even then, like, he's still really good route runner, still one of the better contested catch 50-50 ball winners in the league. And he's, even then, like, even if he's not the D-Hop of old, he's still a veteran who can be an excellent mentor to these younger guys, more specifically to Treylon Burks, who they drafted in the first round last year. He's the guy that they essentially traded away A.J. Brown for. And hell, I mean, he's very similar to A.J. Brown when he came out of Arkansas. But last year was kind of a rough rookie year. He battled injuries a little bit. Wasn't super productive when he got on the field. He has the physical tools. He's huge as shit. He has better breakaway, better speed than people think, even though he's not super fast. He has enough speed where he can break away from DBs. But it's a matter of, can he stay healthy and can he, adjust to the pro game? And that's why I think bringing in DeAndre Hopkins was so huge, because not only do you take the pressure off of Treylon Burks of potentially being the number one wide receiver, but you also have D-Hop being a huge mentor for Treylon as he develops. And then you move into the slot with Nick Westbrook-Akine. I like Nick Westbrook-Akine. He's just incredibly average. There's nothing really crazy about him. Not a great athlete, not a great route runner. He's just sort of average at everything, but he's just sort of been kind of the reliable slot guy for this team for the past couple of years. And yeah, there's really nothing else to say about him. It's what you see is what you get. And then Chig Okonkwo, another guy they drafted last year out of Maryland, I want to say. He's probably going to be set up to be this team's Jonnu Smith. Because he was very similar to Jonnu Smith coming out of Maryland, where he's sort of like this, he's not big enough to be like a tight, he's sort of like this tight end fullback hybrid almost, where you can use him as a fullback and also as an inline tight end as well. Really good athlete, really good after the catch. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how Chig Okonkwo performs this year in year two. And then you get to number 4 with the Houston Texans, obviously. They don't really have any superstars or really like a true number 1. They're hoping Nico Collins takes a step up and becomes this team's number 1. Because, we've seen it. He's taken sort of a gradual step up from year to year. And he's just your classic big body ball winner, a decent route runner, not really much of an after the catch threat, but he's just sort of your reliable guy that you put on a deep route, not somebody that's going to stack DBs, but rather somebody that's going to, you just throw it up to him on a 50-50 ball and just trust that he's going to come down with it. And there's no reason why Nico Collins can't be one of those guys in the league. And yeah, I'm just really interested to see how Nico Collins develops this year with CJ Stroud, who is incredibly accurate. So that'll be fun to see. And then Robert Woods is brought in pretty much just as a veteran presence and really nothing else. He's not the player he once was. He's up there in age. He's clearly on the decline. He's battled injuries these past couple of years. He battled them in Tennessee. And yeah, anything you get from him is just sort of like good, I guess. But he's really here as just a veteran presence to develop some of these younger guys and nothing else. I did think it was interesting that Noah Brown is listed as the slot receiver at the moment. I thought for sure it would have been Tank Dell, because Tank Dell lit it up in training camp and lit it up in the preseason. And I don't think it'll be long until he is taking full-time reps in the slot. But right now, it is Noah Brown, who they brought in from Dallas and is just sort of your average big body receiver who's a good route runner. Like, there's just really nothing to say about Noah Brown. He's just average. That's really all it is. And then you have Dalton Schultz, who's one of these bigger name free agents they brought in the offseason from Dallas as well. And he's just your classic, all reliable at tight end. Not the best blocker in the world, but decent enough. Really good route runner, great contested catch guy, decent athlete. He's just a really, really good, sound starting tight end in the NFL. And really reliable in the receiving game as well. But other than that, there's really nothing else to say about this Texans receiving core as a whole. And now we move on from the sexiest part of the offense to the least sexy part of the offense, and that is the offensive line units. Number one is going to be Indianapolis for me, and that is very debatable to some people because, this offensive line has not been as good as it has been for the past couple years. That's kind of a reflection of Quentin Nelson as well. He's been one of the best guards in the NFL throughout his entire career. Though last year he did take a noticeable step down. He wasn't the same dominant run blocker he once was. He wasn't the same dominant pass protector. I don't know what was going on with Quentin Nelson last year. I mean, the Colts as a whole really underperformed last year. So maybe last year was just a fluke and he goes back to being the Quentin Nelson of old, because Quentin Nelson of old is a dominating bat out of hell, and is always really fun to watch. But then let's start from the left going down to the right, outside of Quentin Nelson. At left tackle is Bernard Raymond, who they drafted in the 3rd round last year, and he was one of these developmental tackles, really big, great athlete, a former tight end, and he's sort of still learning the position. He's still learning how to play the position. And you saw last year, he had some really ugly losses, but there were also times where he showed really good flashes, where he does use his athleticism to win. And it really is, interesting to see how Bernard Raymond develops. I wouldn't be surprised by year's end or even by next year, he's a really good starting caliber left tackle in the NFL. He has the athleticism to do it. It's just, like I said, he's still learning the position. And then Ryan Kelly is your starting center. He is just as rock solid as you can get. He's one of the better centers in the league. Very good run blocker, very good communicator, is a really smart player. I mean, he's coming from Alabama, so you kind of have to be. So he is just the definition of an excellent starting center and one of the more underrated players in the league. And then Will Fries is your starting right guard. He's the clear weak link of this unit. He's sort of below average to average, And it's you're hoping that he's still young. You're hoping his development comes along at some point. But as of right now, he is sort of just below average at the moment at really everything he does. And then Braden Smith as your starting right tackle is just really, really good. He really asserted himself last year as like one of these guys that could be a top 10 right tackle in the NFL. He locked down TJ Watt. He had some really great games last year, and there's no reason why he can't keep developing and keep improving in his game. Because if last year was any indication, he's another guy where he should be a dominant starting tackle for years and years to come. And then you get to number 2 with the Houston Texans, and thank God, if you're a Texans fans, you better be thanking your lucky stars that this team was able to retain Laramie Tunsil and he didn't force his way out, because he might be the most important part of this offense, more so than people might realize. Because if they didn't have Laramie Tunsil and CJ Stroud was running for his life his entire rookie year, you would be terrified. But Laramie Tunsil is one of the most incredibly impactful left tackles in the NFL. Rock solid as a pass protector, good as a run blocker, but he's one of the best, if not the best, pass protecting left tackle in the NFL. And having that guy to protect CJ Stroud's blind side, I mean, everyone was saying, like, would you rather retain Laramie Tunsil or Brandon Cooks for this team in the offseason? And I was like, Laramie Tunsil, he's more important than Brandon Cooks is for CJ Stroud's development and keeping him upright and keeping him healthy so he doesn't get killed out there and have his confidence get shot. So having Laramie Tunsil on this team is so incredibly important. And then the rest of this offensive line unit is just very, it's a wait and see, more specifically with the left guard and the center. Left guard, Kenyon Green, who is, he's approaching bust territory. He's not listed here. Kendrick Green is. which I just realized that actually. Both guys that are going to be playing guard named Green. But Kenyon Green, they drafted in the first round last year, had an awful rookie season, and he's on IR and is going to miss the entire season this year. And so as a result, they trade with the Pittsburgh Steelers to bring in Kendrick Green. And Kendrick Green was a bust in Pittsburgh as a starting center, which it's weird to call a third-round pick a bust, but that's what he was. He was brought in to be the team's starting center, was completely terrible in Pittsburgh. He gets shipped here to Houston, and he's now listed as their starting left guard. And we'll see if it's a change of scenery, a change of position, if that does anything. But, Kendrick Green has always sort of been, he's not the strongest player. That's sort of always what has held him back, is that the strength of the game has sort of been a big issue for him. So it really is just a wait and see with Kendrick Green. And then Juice Scruggs, who they drafted out of Penn State in the second round this year, another one of these East-West Shrine Game guys. He's a good athlete, really good athlete, but incredibly raw. It was weird that they spent a second-round pick on him, but like I said, it's a wait and see on him. Who knows? He could probably surprise in year one. We'll just have to wait and see. But then you get to the right guard, and Shaq Mason, who they acquired in a trade with Tampa, was in New England for years before that. And, he was an excellent guard for years in New England. Gets shipped off, shockingly, to Tampa last year. And in Tampa, he wasn't the same player he was in New England. He's definitely taken a step down. He is older. And now he's here in Houston. And it's just a matter of wait and see. He's not the Shaq Mason of old, but he's still a veteran presence that's still a good starting guard. He's not the great player anymore, but he's still a good starting caliber guard. And then you get Titus Howard as your right tackle, and he's another one of these very solid guys that has improved steadily every single year he's been in the league. And he's coming up on a contract year, and I expect him to ball out. I really do. I think he's, like I said, he's slowly developed every single year, and I expect this year for a Titus Howard breakout. I would not be shocked at all if that's the case. And then you get to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Walker Little is listed as the left tackle at the moment. And, when he's dealt with injuries going back to his college days at Stanford, but when he's played, he's been pretty damn good. He's very solid, very technically sound. If he can stay healthy, he's another one of these guys where he can be one of the better pass-protecting left tackles in the NFL. That's for damn sure. And then Ben Bartch is probably the weak link of the team, though Brandon Sheriff is a candidate. But Ben Bartch is a guy that is still incredibly young, still developing, still raw in a lot of aspects. So there's really not much to say about him. He's still, like I said, he's still young. He's still developing. We'll see. And then, we'll just talk about Brandon Sheriff right now, who's the right guard at the moment. He was another one of these big free agent signings. He was a monster for Washington for so many years. He comes here to Jacksonville, and I don't want to say he fell off a cliff, but he did not look as good as he once was back in his Washington days. He looks older, he looks slower, he lost a lot more than he used to. It's kind of shocking that they gave him that much money and he's taken a clear step down. I think age is kind of catching up to him a little bit, which is sad. And then you get to the right tackle, Anton Harrison, their first-round pick out of Oklahoma. He's a really good athlete. Really, really good athlete. Some were saying he could have easily gone in the top 15. I wasn't that high on him, but he's just rock solid at everything. Really polished pass protector. Really great run blocker. I expect Anton Harrison to really step in. It's very difficult for rookie tackles. I mean, we saw this with Evan Neal last year. He was probably the best tackle in that class last year, and he sucked his rookie year. So I can't say like I expect them to be really good in their rookie year, but I expect, Anton Harrison to be at least decent. Like I feel like that's a reasonable expectation, at least in his rookie year, and then develop into a great right tackle for the future. Then Luke Fortner, second year guy who they drafted in the, I want to say, third round last year. And he's another one of these really young guys who we just have to wait and have him develop. He's still raw. And you saw last year, he had some really good games last year, but he also had some ugly losses last year. So he's another guy that has the athletic tools. It's just let him develop for a little longer. That's all. And then you get to the Tennessee Titans, and this is, forget this division. This is probably the worst offensive line in the NFL at the moment. Andre Dillard is your starting left tackle. He's a solid left tackle that's gotten a bad rap from Philadelphia because he was a former first-round pick who lost a starting job to Jordan Mailata, and that's why they felt comfortable letting him go. But he's still a solid, sound starting left tackle. And I think coming here to Tennessee, with a fresh start, we'll see how he goes. And then Peter Skoronski, the first-round pick out of Northwestern, and they have him listed at guard. I really liked him as a tackle, but teams were kind of nervous about him because of his arm length. He has kind of a shorter wingspan compared to that of, NFL caliber tackles. So they're moving him in at guard, which I still think he'll be really damn good at. He's very technically sound. He's one of these like dickhead mentality guys. He's a guy from Northwestern. He kind of has to be. So we will see how he is in his rookie year. It's tough for rookie offensive linemen to come in right away and be really damn good right off the bat. It's very rare that actually happens. And then their starting center is Aaron Brewer, and he's probably the worst starting center in the NFL, even though, he's a very good run blocker, but he's a putrid pass protector. And it's not anything from like a technical standpoint of why he's so bad at it. No, the reason he's so bad at it is because Aaron Brewer, a starting NFL center, weighs 274 pounds. He looks like a linebacker out there. He looks like a linebacker that they asked to play center. Yeah, he's so thin compared to that of most linemen. And that's really why he struggles so much in pass protection. You can't leave him one-on-one because he'll get destroyed. And having him go against, just in this division that we'll talk on later, guys like, if he goes one-on-one against like Grover Stewart or DeForest Buckner, it's lights out. It's game over, man. It's game over. So it's gonna be a tricky one to watch with Aaron Brewer. And then Dylan Radunes, who they drafted a couple years ago out of North Dakota State. And, he's a guy where he's another one of these, say it with me, raw developing young offensive lineman that hasn't gotten a lot of reps in real game situations. This year he should, especially with the suspension of Nicholas Petit-Ferrer. So he's going to be able to actually get some on-field experience for at least the first 6 games of the season. And we'll see, because like I said, he's another one of these. He has all the athletic tools. It's just he needs to learn the position a little more. And then Brunskill, they got him from San Francisco. Don't know entirely too much about him. And that's pretty much it on the offensive line. Now we're going to switch over to the defensive side and talk about these defensive lines, where the Tennessee Titans go from having the worst offensive line in the NFL to one of the better defensive lines in the NFL. And it all starts with Jeffrey Simmons, who he has officially asserted himself as one of the premier defensive tackles in all of football. Just a complete shit wrecker. He is so dominant as a pass rusher. You can't leave him one-on-one. If you put him one-on-one with a guard or a center, like I said, it is game over. Yeah, he is so incredibly powerful, really good as a run defender. Like I said, there's really nothing else to say about Jeffrey Simmons. He's one of the elites of the league. And they get Harold Landry back, which is huge. He missed all of last year after he blew out his knee in training camp last year. He's going to come back, and he's the perfect definition of one of these modern pass rushers. Very bendy, very quick off the ball, really good athlete, super explosive. He's not going to be like this 15, 20 sack guy or anything, but he's just a really good bendy athlete that's going to cause chaos and really be a headache for opposing tackles. And also really excellent as a stunt man as well, where you can run him on a bunch of stunts and he'll just come in and just destroy, guards or running backs trying to block him. So getting him back was huge for this defense. And then you go down the line, Arden Key, they brought in from San Francisco, is another one of these guys where he's just an excellent stunt man. They ran a lot of stunts with him at Jacksonville. Has the body type for it. He has kind of like that Josh Uche body type where he's smaller compared to what you think as like a true edge rusher. But he uses that to his advantage. Very quick off the ball, very bendy, really great in stunt situations. So he could be a really fun fit here. And then Danico Autry is one of these tweener types where he's too big to be a pure edge, but also like he's more of like that 4-eye kind of type where he's too big to be a true edge, but also not big enough to be a true like defensive tackle or a true nose. So he's just like a tweener in that sense, and he'll just blow up. He has this bull rush where he'll just blow up tackles, blow up guards, and he's one of the more underrated players in the league, and he is a really good player in this defense for damn sure. Tahir Tar is a really good, solid nose tackle, decent run defender, really not much as a pass rusher, but they don't really ask him to do that. Just really good, just a good space eater to eat up blocks and let all these other guys go and eat. So he's a really good piece to have here. And then number 2 is the Indianapolis Colts. Kwity Paye, they drafted him in the first round a couple years ago. There were some question marks about Kwity Paye because he didn't have a lot of sack production at Michigan State, or not Michigan State, at just Michigan. There you go. But he was a guy that was drafted because he has a lot of really good tools. Again, one of these really bendy, great explosive athletes off the ball. And he's sort of just kind of been exactly like that. Not a really big guy in the stat sheet, but just a really solid, sound, starting caliber edge rusher. And they don't really need him to be that because of everybody else on this defensive line. I'll start with DeForest Buckner, who's, again, with Jeffrey Simmons as one of the most unblockable forces, not just at the defensive tackle position, but in the entire league. He's so big and so explosive and so powerful and dominant. Teams double team him constantly, and they still struggle blocking him because he's so big and so strong. He is what makes this defensive line so deadly. And then Grover Stewart right next to him, he's just your typical nose tackle. Not really much of as a pass rusher, but he's such a great run defender because he's so strong and so powerful at the point of attack that he will just eat up blocks similar to DeForest Buckner because he is such a good run defender and so big. And yeah, man, he's one of the better nose tackles in the NFL for damn sure. And then Samson Ebukam, they brought over from San Francisco, and he's another one of these incredible athletes at the edge position where they can run a shit ton of stunts at. And he has this ability to just always be around the football. And when you have a guy that, even if he's not supposed to be, or like the ball is going away from him, he always seems to be within 5 yards of where the football dies. And if you always have a guy like that, if you have a guy like that is always around the football at all times and is always super high energy, you will love to have a guy like that on your defense. And then number 3 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this is a one where is kind of interesting. I mean, we know what we get out of Josh Allen, who is, I think, finally asserted himself as one of the top 10 edge rushers in the NFL, or at least one of the more underrated ones in the league. He's been getting better every single year, and he is just so great. He's so physically talented, very good diversity of pass rush skill sets and pass rush moves, and he's just the model of consistency, and he is the best thing they have here. And then you move down the line. Roy Robertson Harris is just very solid, strong enough to play the run, not really much as a pass rusher, but he's fine. Nothing too crazy about him. Devon Hamilton really took a step up last year. I was not expecting that. He's another one of these guys that he's asserting himself as one of the better nose tackles in the NFL. Excellent run defender, even improved a little as a pass rusher, and he's improved his play strength a little bit. So having him develop last year was really good. He's going into a contract year himself, and I expect him to get even better than he was last year because he played really well last year. Somebody who didn't play well last year that I really did expect to was Forenzu Fatukasi. And, he was another one of these big free agent signings from the New York Jets. And he was shit last year. I don't know what the hell happened to him. Hopefully last year was just like a fluke. And he goes back to the Forenzu Fatukasi he was with the Jets. But last year was it was bad for him. And then we ended out with Trayvon Walker. He was the number 1 overall pick last year, where, let's be honest, he became the number 1 overall pick last year strictly based off of his combine performance. He dominated his combine last year, and that was the only reason he went number 1 overall. There's no reason outside of that he should have been picked, over Aiden Hutchinson, over Kayvon Thibodeau. There's no reason, because you watch him at Georgia, and you saw he was a great athlete, but it didn't really show up on film a whole lot because he didn't know how to use his athleticism. And then you go into his rookie year in Jacksonville, and it was the same exact thing. He was actually statistically one of the worst pass rushers in the NFL. So you hope that the coaching staff can at least develop him to become a good player. I don't think in theory, with his athletic ability, he should be like a dominant player, but that's a big if. So it's really is a wait and see on Trayvon Walker if he develops at all. So that's really all there is to say about him. And then finally, the Houston Texans. And, this is it's an underwhelming group with Will Anderson in there that it's really your upside guy. Will Anderson, Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans pulled off a master class at the top of the draft, walking away with both CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. Everyone was convinced that they wanted Will Anderson. We all knew they wanted Will Anderson. D'Amico wanted Will Anderson every bit of his being. He would be the perfect Nick Bosa guy in his defense. And they did everything in their power to move up and get him. And they pulled it off. They walked out with their guy that could be their franchise quarterback, and they walked out with their cornerstone on the defense. And he's just a really great athlete, really good diversity of pass rush moves, very quick, very strong off the ball. And there's no reason why he can't be this defense's Nick Bosa, with D'Amico Ryans bringing his defense in from San Francisco. And then you get to the rest of this group, and it's just sort of, meh. Jonathan Grenard is on the other end of Will Anderson. And, he showed some signs in his first couple of years of development and then took a big step back last year. So hopefully he gets back on the right track and, figure some things out, because in theory, he should be really good in this D'Amico Ryan's defense. So hopefully he improves, because there is a world where he could be a solid number 2 for sure. Sheldon Rankins, they brought him in. He's been in the league for a while, but he's still really explosive, more explosive than you'd expect out of a defensive tackle. But he's still really strong, really decent pass rusher. So he's a good veteran guy to bring in. And then Malik Collins is sort of baby Sheldon Rankins, has the athletic tools, just doesn't really know how to put them all together. But he's still young, he's still developing, and in theory, he could be a really good player by year's end. That's for damn sure. So now we move further up the front seven and talk about these linebackers, where the Indianapolis Colts do rank number 1, though there is an asterisk next to that ranking, and it all banks on whether or not Shaquille Leonard returns to form and he comes back healthy. If he's healthy, then this linebacking core is incredible, and Shaquille Leonard is one of the best linebackers in the NFL when healthy. He's one of the most there's no linebacker, probably not even any player in the league on defense, better at forcing turnovers than Shaquille Leonard is. He has perfected the art of the peanut punch, and it seems like every time he plays in a game, he forces at least 2 turnovers a game. He is so incredible at forcing turnovers, and he's also developed in a lot of other aspects. He's developed as a run defender, as a coverage player. He's asserted himself as, when healthy, one of the best linebackers, basically one of the top 10 linebackers in the NFL for sure. And even if he's not healthy, you're still feeling comfortable, because Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed both got playing time last year when Darius Leonard got hurt. Shaquille Leonard, my apologies. Sorry, he was Darius for so long. But when Shaquille Leonard got hurt, Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed both came in and both played really damn well. EJ Speed was a special teamer for so long, came in as basically getting starting reps at linebacker, and was an excellent run defender, was just playing out of his mind last year. And Zaire Franklin was the same thing, where he came into the league very raw as a developmental guy and has slowly come along and has really become a really good starting caliber linebacker. So, again, even if Shaq Leonard isn't healthy, you still feel comfortable with Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed taking over as the 2 starting linebackers. And then he moved down to the Houston Texans as a number 2. And Denzel Perryman is one of the most underrated players in the league. He's sort of bounced around a little bit, and he's just been a really good player everywhere he's gone. He's just one of your old school linebackers, where he's going to come down, play the run, and just be a force in the middle. Sort of hit or miss as a coverage player, but yeah, he's just a really damn good linebacker that any team would love to have as their starting middle linebacker. And then you have 2 guys next to him that are just giant question marks. Christian Harris, who they drafted at Alabama last year, putrid. Really, really bad rookie year. Has the physical tools, but, really bad coverage player. Really bad, or at least bad last year as a coverage player. Really bad run defender. He just doesn't believe in defending the run at all. So he has the ability to be a good coverage player, but he was at Alabama, but just, like I said, last year wasn't a good rookie year, and most rookie linebackers don't come in and play well. So that's not a slight to Christian Harris, and if anything, I expect D'Amico Ryans, who's a former Alabama linebacker himself, to develop Christian Harris, and there's a world where he can be really good and take a huge step up in his sophomore season in the NFL rather than how he performed as a rookie. And then Blake Cashman is just, He's been a fine player when he's out there, but he's just been constantly injured throughout his career, and anything you get from him is house money at this point. And then number 3 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Foyset Oluokun has asserted himself as a really, really good linebacker in the NFL. I think he had, like around 170 tackles last year, some batshit insane like that. So he's a really, really good starting linebacker, willing to defend the run, really good, fast, quick athlete that can get to spots really, really good, really quickly. And he's just, again, in Denzel Perryman, one of the more underrated players in the entire NFL. And then the other starting linebacker is Devin Lloyd, who looked like he was going to be, one of the candidates for Defensive Rookie of the Year for about 4 weeks. And then just all of a sudden played like shit the rest of the year, got benched, and it was just very rough out of nowhere. His rookie year went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows very, very fast. And I don't know what happened, but hopefully another year in the league, hopefully he gets his act together at some point, because I don't know what the hell happened last year for him. And then finally, number 4 is the Tennessee Titans. Azeez Al-Shaair, really good athlete, really good player, brought over from San Francisco. In Mike Vrabel's defense, should be a really good player. He's a good sideline-to-sideline player. So he, in theory, should be a good player here. And then I don't really know much about Jack Gibbons, so I don't know. I really can't really give an opinion on him. But last and certainly not least, we're going to talk about these secondaries for these teams. Starting out with, I have number 1 as the Tennessee Titans for this group. And this is a very interesting group. This is like I said, it's a number 1 ranking for this team in this division, but it's not like a strong number 1, because this is a very like up and down group. Starting with these corners, Christian Fulton is just a really solid all-around corner. He doesn't have the most physical upside in the world, but he's very sound, very technically solid at everything he does. He's just been really good ever since he's gotten playing time here in Tennessee. He's fine as like a low-end number 1, high-end number 2. He's fine. But he's also really this secondary as a whole is a huge reason as to why bringing in someone like a Sean Murphy-Bunting from Tampa was so vital. He's been really good for Tampa for a while. Was a key contributor on that Super Bowl team for the Bucs. And, kind of had an injury-riddled year last year, but comes over as a big free agent signing. And he was incredibly vital to bring in because, like I said, they don't have a lot of depth, especially at corner. Their next best option was Roger McCreary, who's listed as their starting slot. And McCreary is fine. He's a good, solid corner. He was exactly what they expected when they drafted him out of Auburn. But you don't want to measure number 2 because he, like Christian Fulton, has physical limitations. In fact, McCreary's physical limitations are actually more serious than Fulton's. But Sean Murphy-Bunting has always been a really good athlete. Again, really technically sound, but also really good sticky man corner. He's the best thing they have right now as far as corners go. So he's a really good compliment to have. And then you get to these safeties, and I really like this safety duo. Kevin Byard as the free safety. I mean, he's probably, I don't even want to say probably, he is the most underrated secondary player in the NFL. He's one of the best safeties in the NFL by far. He just doesn't get talked about in those discussions like with Jesse Bates or a Derwin James or even a Jamal Adams still gets, believe it or not. Kevin Byard doesn't really get mentioned in those guys. He's not one of these mainstream media darlings like the rest of those guys. But he's arguably the most well-rounded safety out of all those guys. Excellent coverage player, excellent run defender. Anything you ask of him, he will do at a borderline elite level. He is, outside of Jeffrey Simmons, the best player they have, not just on this defense, but on this team. So having him still here is crucial because, like I said, he's the best thing they have here. And then Amani Hooker is basically just a baby baby Kevin Byard. Same thing as Kevin Byard, can basically do anything you ask of him, just he does it as a good, not great level. So he's a good safety, just not as good as his running mate in Byard. But he's still a really good compliment, and he's still a really good player nonetheless. And then 2 and 3, this was kind of tricky because, there are things that I like about these number 2 and number 3 secondaries, and there's things I really don't like about these two. I eventually settled at Houston at number 2 and Jacksonville at number 3. Mainly because Houston just has more upside in their secondary. They have more youth. They have guys that can be great players. So I have Houston at number 2. And it starts with Derek Stingley as one of their starting corners. They spent the 3rd overall pick on him last year. And he took his lumps last year. Lost a lot more than he won, which, as a rookie corner, you kind of expect. Because corner is a really difficult position for rookies to come in right off the gate. And I think people would be more willing to accept that with Derek Stingley had it not been for the New York Jets drafting Sauce Gardner one spot after him, who came in and was the best corner in the league in his rookie year. So it sucks because those guys are always going to be linked. There's nothing you can do about it. But Derek Stingley, I think with DeMeco Ryans coming in his defense, he's going to play much, much better because he was more of a man-to-man corner coming out of LSU, where in Lovie Smith's defense, they had him running a lot more zone, where he's just not that comfortable with it. So hopefully in a more man-to-man system and an extra year of development, he will be one of the better corners in the league because he has the physical traits. He was arguably the best player in the draft last year, just from a pure football player and a pure athlete standpoint. But it's a wait and see with him. And then the corner starting opposite him is Steven Nelson. Is sort of another one of these what you see is what you get guys. Just a really good veteran player, been around the league for a while. Just really solid sound. He was sort of asked to be the veteran presence in a young secondary last year. Good news for him, though, he doesn't have to be that because they bring in Jimmy Ward in the offseason. DeMeco Ryans brought him over from San Francisco, and he is again, I talked about Kevin Byard being one of the more underrated safeties in the league. Same thing goes for Jimmy Ward as a pure strong safety. Excellent run defender, can match up on tight ends and running backs extremely well. He's just a really good player, especially in this defense, and he knows this defense like the back of his hand, which is why DeMeco wanted to bring him over, because he's not only a veteran presence who's been in the league for a long, long time, that'll allow guys and to mentor guys like Jalen Petrie in the safety room or like a Derek Stingley, but he's also going to be an excellent player in this defense as well. So bringing him over was huge, and I don't think people really understand just how vital it was bringing him over. I talked about how Sean Murphy-Bunting was vital for the Titans to bring over because of their depth. Jimmy Ward was a vital signing for Houston because of not just his knowledge of the system, but also to mentor these younger guys. And then let's talk about another one of those younger guys in his safety running mate, Jalen Petrie, who they drafted in the 2nd round, I believe, last year out of Baylor. And he was a really fun player at Baylor. He was another one of these safeties where he just always seems to be around the football no matter what. Last year was very hit or miss, but he had a lot more good on tape than bad. He was kind of like the reverse Derek Stingley in that regard. He's a really fun young player, and I'm excited to see how he develops in this defense. And I wouldn't be shocked if if not this year, next year, he asserts himself as one of the top safeties in the league. I would not be shocked. I am that high on Jalen Petrie. And then Tavier Thomas is listed as the slot corner. Houston fans really like him. The team really likes him. He's a really decent athlete, really good coverage player, sound technically. He's going to get the shot to be the full-time starter, and we'll see how he plays this year. And then we get to number 3 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, like I said, this is a very, some parts of this defense I like, and others I'm just sort of blah on. Tyson Campbell is the number 1 corner for this team right now, and he is just really good, solid, excellent corner, very good in man coverage. Not like one of these ball hawking types. He's not going to try and bait quarterbacks. He's just going to stick to his receiver like glue and not make you even think that he's even open for the slightest bit of time. And he was like that back in his days in Georgia, and he's been exactly that here in Jacksonville in the NFL. Just a really good number one corner. Can you do better than him from an athletic standpoint? Sure you can, but you're not mad at him being your number one corner. And then Darius Williams on the other end, you would think that, because you saw this last year, they tried to put him into the slot because he is really short. He's 5'9", and most slot corners are around that 5'9", 5'10" height range. And most guys thrive in that situation because, they don't have the height to play on the outside. Darius Williams is the opposite. He's 5'9", but he's much more comfortable being an outside corner and much better as an outside corner than he is on the slot, where he's just not very good. He doesn't have the speed or the natural athleticism that most slot corners do. So he's much more comfortable playing on the outside, and we saw that last year. He played in the slot originally in Jacksonville, didn't look good at all. They moved into the outside and instantly looked like the guy they signed from the Los Angeles Rams. So that's a really good corner duo. And then that's pretty much it. The only other guy worth talking about that you're really super excited about potentially is Andre Cisco. He's a guy, he came from Syracuse, so I have to root for him naturally. But outside of that, he's a really good player with an interesting upside. Has good range, is a willing run defender. He's one of these guys where he still has to learn where to take a risk and go for the big play and when not to. He's still coming along on that, but I don't think it'll be very long until he figures out when to do that and when not to do that. He's a very interesting player to keep an eye on. And then Rayshawn Jenkins, he was a captain for this team last year, and they really like him, and it's not impossible to see why. He's he's another one of these safety linebacker hybrids. In this case, he's a much more of a safety, but they will put him in the box a lot because he is so physical down the line of scrimmage. And he's another one of these guys where he's just he's very solid. He knows what his role is, and he's going to do it very, very well. And then Trey Herndon as the starting slot corner is just the epitome of painfully average. Not really worth talking about him. And then there's a clear bottom tier with the Indianapolis Colts. And man, once upon a time, there was a lot of intrigue and excitement with this group. But that is very quickly taken a step back. I mean, that's the perfect thing to say about the Indianapolis Colts as a whole. Kenny Moore is the starting slot. He's the best player they have in this group. But even he has taken a downtick, He's much more comfortable in zone than he is in man. He's still one of the better slot corners in the NFL. But if your slot corner is your best defensive back, that's a bit of an issue. Because your two starting outside corners, one of them are Juju Brents, who he is in a perfect scheme fit just from a physical standpoint. Gus Bradley, the defensive coordinator here, he's come from that, Seattle 3 where they had these bigger, taller, bigger body corners, and Juju Brents fits that perfectly. 6'3", second-round pick out of Kansas State. He is in a perfect situation for him to thrive. He's probably not going to thrive right off the bat because, like I said with Derek Stingley, most rookie corners, unless your name is Sauce Gardner, come in and just struggle pretty much, not all the time, but pretty consistently throughout their rookie years. So don't expect anything out of him year one, but he's still in a really good scheme for him. And then the other corner, Dallas Flowers, I don't really know much about him. He's a backup player that I don't even know if he's even remotely good or not. And then you get to these safeties. Rodney Thomas is very interesting. Another one of these guys that Colts fans are pretty excited to see how he develops. Got some starting time last year, had a couple interceptions. He has a really interesting physical skill set because he is sort of taller and he is a converted corner, so he's still learning the position. So we'll see how he develops. A lot of players around the organization and a lot of people around the organization really interested in seeing how he develops as their starting free safety full time. And then Julian Blackmon, once upon a time, was viewed as one of the ascending players in the NFL, let alone safeties, because he had an excellent rookie year during the COVID year, and he seemed like another one of these rising stars. And then, tore his Achilles in 2021 and was just never the same after that. Very good run defender, but he's sort of taken a downtick from a coverage standpoint, and just his play overall has been very hit or miss. So it's kind of sad because, like I said, he was supposed to be one of the next big superstars at the safety position, and it just hasn't worked out for him. But that is going to put a wrap on this video. Stay tuned. We will be back in a couple days for the NFC South preview. But like I said at the start of this video, if you have not already, if you'd like to, please like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoy this content or know anybody that enjoys this content. And if you want to support the channel, go to the link below to my Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. With that being said, I'm Double Diesel. Peace.